We met in the college and career department here at Bell Shoals. I don't really remember from that. I remember from my mom trying to set us up. I think what brought us together so quickly was because we both felt called to missions and to overseas work. And we had had that talk on our second date.
And I just said, Cindy, what do you think about missions? And she said something like, I'm called, but was hoping not to go alone. And I said, well, I'm called. It was on a Sunday morning, and I brought flowers to the church.
He called me up to the altar, and I'm standing up on the stairs, and he handed me the bouquet of flowers and asked me to marry him. After a month of dating, I was kind of a little bit shocked.
At first she said, let me think about it, and then she said,
yes, 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 yes. Are you saying yes? Yes, I'm saying yes.
It was scary at first to be called to missions. I felt called to work with Muslims, and knowing that could be dangerous, but in a world religion class, over 1 billion Muslims that are religious and are hoping that they'll go to heaven because of their works. And I just thought that's a lot of people that aren't going to go to heaven without Jesus, and so somebody's got to tell them.
Rush hour, this is not the worst of it.
Learning a different language was a challenge. But that also, brought me in contact with my neighbors who I had to rely on.
I remember one time being discouraged, but Cindy said, how many people have you shared the gospel with? And I started naming these guys off, and at that time there was about 12 guys. And I had shared with them over tea, so face to face, shared with them, and many times, more than once. Cindy said, if we weren't here, who's going to share with all those people?
We were able to serve there without any incident for 3 years, and just the people got into our hearts. And they were so hospitable. And I think they taught me more than I taught them.
But I did notice bin Laden calendars in almost every shop. This was pre-9/11, but he was a figure there. Started reading the paper to try to get a feel for the culture, and there would be articles in there saying that we were infidels and kill Americans and British and take their stuff. But the first term, before 9/11, the people were very open and hospitable. But it was building. That stuff was building underneath. Now we're in Islamabad, the capital, where they're reporting on the war on terror. We thought that was safer than where we were, about 3 hours north of there. And one of the benefits of being there was the International Church. It was about 400 yards from the U.S. Embassy.
It's a Western type church building. And we normally come in this door and go up to the front on the right. But because we were running late, we didn't want to go up front. We kind of scooted into the back, more middle section.
They do the worship, and then they release the children, and they can go downstairs to children's church. Luke, my youngest, and Emily, they jumped up and they said, come on, Samuel. They said, we can go, and they're ready to go. And Samuel says, I have a stomach ache, and I'm not going to go. I'm going to stay. And so the two of my children went downstairs, and Samuel was sitting in the middle between Cindy and I.
And then as the preacher is about finished with his sermon, I hear pop, pop, pop.
We heard some commotion, and I turned and looked, and this guy had come in, and he had grenades strapped to his chest. And he had a string, and he pulled all the pins at the same time. And when he dropped them, they landed on the tile, and so we can sort of hear that. We thought it was fireworks or something. We didn't know what it is. So I look over, and he starts throwing those grenades. And the first one was up towards the piano where we normally sat. And then I saw him throw one in our section. And it was maybe about 10 rows. We were in folding chairs and about 10 rows in front of us. And I just threw out my arm and said, get down. And then I covered over the top of Cindy. But we both thought that we're going to die. The last blast happened. I'm laying flat on my face and my glasses are broken.
It was very, very smoky and smoggy in there and screaming. And
I'm 6 or 8 feet away from Cindy. I had to stand up and walk back over to check on her. I could see she had a large hole in the back of her thigh.
And he comes over and he goes, "Where's Samuel? I can't see Samuel."
And then I heard this whimper, and he was thrown like 15 feet, and he was laying, and there was a chair laying down, and his neck was over the chair. And I walked over to him, and there was a big spot of blood on the carpet. When I picked him up, I saw that he was wounded in the back of his head. He had two holes in the back of the head, and I picked him up, and I just said, "Samuel, a terrible person has did this, but God is with us."
They got like 6 men to pick me up and take me out, which some of those men I hadn't seen before. Sometimes I think there were some angels in there.
Samuel was the most serious with the brain injuries. Cindy had the most pain because of the most surgeries, like maybe 7 surgeries. I looked the worst, but I was all right.
Samuel had shrapnel wounds from his head all the way to his feet. So they like had to do minor surgery on him almost every day when they would go to change his dressings and his Band-Aids and stuff.
And so before we left, the doctor said he's young enough his brain will rewire. And except the scars, I mean, he's healed. But he said, I have a piece of shrapnel in my arm. And he said, people get tattoos. He says, I don't really need a tattoo because I can just feel this piece. And he says, I know that God saved my life and he has a purpose for my life. All I have to do is feel that shrapnel in my arm.
Samuel is married to a wonderful girl, Marissa, and they live in Kansas City.
He's going to get a PhD in biblical counseling, and he's an intern at Midwestern Seminary. He still loves missions, so he wants to do missions. He doesn't know exactly how that's going to look, but he has a heart for missions. A verse that we just held on to was, God says, I'm an ever-present help in times of trouble. And when the trouble happened, God was there.
He healed us. He healed us in more than the physical sense. He healed us mentally and spiritually. I look back and I think we were so close. As a family, we were so close.
I was speaking in a church in Tampa, and the pastor asked me a question, something about what's the greatest thing you've seen God do in your family since you've been overseas? And I had to think about it, and I said, when Cindy and I went out, we were 2 missionaries. But I said, now we're 6 missionaries. And I said, I think our children will do a better job than we do.
Yes, God called the Womble family to forsake all and trust him in Pakistan. But he's calling all of us to do that daily because he wants so much more for us than what this life is. He may not call you to go across the seas, but he's calling you to go next door or across the street. Jesus said, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. So I used to train and say, if you're not fishing, then you're not following very closely, So there's a lot of fishing that we need to do.